All right, everybody, Michael Cohen here with you on the Sports Talk Nation. Glad you're joining us here today. Now, we're going to get back on the ship here and start to talk about these NFL divisions. Now, we opened up the month. We talked about the AFC East. If you didn't get a chance to watch that video, the link is below in the description. I previewed the AFC East as they were getting ready for training camp. Now we're almost through training camp, almost through the preseason, getting really close to the regular season. So it's nitty-gritty time. We're going to start to pound out these videos on the different divisions within the NFL as we get ready for the season. Today we're going to talk about the NFC East. A lot of intrigue coming out of this division. You have the Eagles coming off of a Super Bowl win. You have the Cowboys coming into the season with a lot of question marks about the depth at wide receiver. The Giants, are they going to rebound from that awful year they had last year, winning only 3 games? Redskins get Alex Smith. So a lot to talk about here with this division. Now, before we get into it, remember, folks, to like and subscribe here on the Sports Talk Nation here on YouTube. You can also follow us on Twitter at OpenMicNJ and also on Facebook, facebook.com/OpenMicProgram. Now, let's get right into this. As you all know, Philadelphia went 13-3 last year. They went on to win the Super Bowl. You have the Cowboys right behind them. Another mediocre season for them under Jason Garrett. They went 9-7. Redskins were in third place at 7-9 last year with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. Of course, Kirk Cousins now in Minnesota. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then wrapping up the NFC East was, well, lo and behold, the New York Giants 3-13 with Ben McAdoo. Oh boy, what a disaster he was as the Giants head coach. Of course, the big headline coming into the 2018 season is, can the Philadelphia Eagles go back to the Super Bowl and win it again? Now, they are in a great position to do so. You know, they have a very good quarterback situation. When you look at it on paper, Carson Wentz coming off of a MVP season last year. Yes, he got hurt, but Nick Foles picked it up very nicely in the playoffs, took that team all the way to the championship, and they won. So from that standpoint, they're in a good spot. They're also in a situation where they're bringing a lot of familiar faces from last year. So it's not as if this is an Eagle team coming in here that's going to have a whole lot of new faces. Yes, I know they bring in Mike Wallace. They bring him in here to be a complimentary receiver. But other than that, it's pretty much the same team we saw just a year ago. Now, you want to talk about maybe the offensive coordinator situation. Of course, with Frank Reich now being the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, that maybe creates a bit of a new dynamic. But, you know, Doug Peterson was calling the plays last year, and I certainly don't see much change coming for Philadelphia from that standpoint. So a team that last year won 13 games. We'll look at the schedule in just a minute, but for this year. But the big question coming into this year, again, is going to be health. It's going to be health of the quarterbacks. Now, Carson Wentz has returned to team drills. He did that this week. He's been sharing first-team reps with Nick Foles. Now, keep in mind, Wentz is still coming back from a very serious knee injury last year. Torn ACL and LCL in his left knee. And he's pretty much been restricted to individual 7-on-7 drills for much of the summer. And he's obviously not going to play in any of these preseason games, hasn't participated in any of them up to this point. It's still a slow progression to get him ready. Now, he still hopes to be ready for Week 1 when the Eagles open up against the Atlanta Falcons. If not, it's going to be Nick Foles. Now, Foles did get a scare last week when he had that shoulder injury. Ended up being a sore shoulder against the Patriots in a preseason game. And from everything that the Eagles are saying, it sounds like Foles is going to be okay from the shoulder strain, I should say. And he will be ready to go, and he will play in their preseason game against Cleveland this week. So all signs, should Wentz not be available Week 1, the Eagles are looking at Nick Foles starting Week 1. Not the worst thing in the world. Now, of course, there's always going to be the conspiracy theorists and people out there going, oh, there's a quarterback controversy, when there really isn't. We all know this is Wentz's team no matter what. Regardless, this is an Eagle team that I expect to be pretty solid this year. There are some hiccups in the schedule. Let's bring it up right now. And as you see, they start with the Falcons on that Thursday night game. Not always a guarantee to win that Thursday night game for the defending champions. We saw that last year with the Patriots losing to Kansas City last year. This will be a rematch of a playoff game last season with the Falcons. That'll be interesting to watch, a very, very interesting watch. We'll see how the Falcons come out in that game against a charged-up Eagle team as they'll be celebrating their first World Championship since 1960. Then they get the Bucs coming in Week 2. Or they go to Tampa Bay, I should say, Week 2. That's the game they should win. Colts Week 3, Titans Week 4. Vikings then come into Philadelphia Week 5, and that's going to be a marquee matchup on Fox that day. Really, the first 4 games should all be wins. I mean, Philadelphia should be going into that game against the Minnesota Vikings at 4-0. That absolutely should be. Could they end up getting tripped up by Atlanta? Maybe it's possible, but they should be 4-0 going into that game. You get the Giants on a Thursday night, a very quick turnaround from the Minnesota game. That could be a tricky spot. Come off of the emotional high from that Viking game, which would be a late Sunday afternoon, and then get ready for the game at the Giants in the Meadowlands. That will be a very quick turnaround. Then the Panthers, and then the Jaguars, which will be at London. So not an easy stretch here for the Eagles in the middle of into October. Again, the Vikings, Giants, Panthers, Jaguars, and then the Cowboys after a bye week going into November. Then they get the Saints, and then the Giants again. So a tough stretch of games here for Philadelphia, and we'll see how they do. I expect them to possibly drop a couple of these games. I don't see them winning all these games. They'll lose a couple. But as we take a look down towards the end of the season, they do have a couple of matchups with Redskins. That big matchup in December against the Rams, and everyone will talk about that being the anniversary of Carson Wentz's injury. We all know that's the game that he got injured in last year when Eagles were playing at the Los Angeles Rams. That'll be a huge game. That's a Sunday night game, and I certainly expect it to stay that way. But this is an Eagle team that, considering they are bringing back basically the same unit, basically the same ball club on both sides of the ball, I expect them to get to at least 11 wins. Certainly 11 or 12 wins this year, and I still think that they're the marquee team out of the NFC East. Do I think that they're going to win the Super Bowl again this year? I don't know. I think the NFC is very, very deep this year. I think Green Bay is going to be pretty good. Minnesota is going to be good. Los Angeles Rams are going to be good. There's going to be a lot of teams. Of course, we didn't even get to the South with Atlanta, New Orleans, Carolina. There's a lot of good teams out there in the NFC this year. So at the very least, Philadelphia is the marquee team coming out of the East. Let's move right along, talk about the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys coming off of a 9-7 season last year, and the big headline last season was the legal trouble around running back Ezekiel Elliott. Now, as we all remember, Elliott was suspended 6 games last year, and it was an on-again, off-again, on-again, off-again drama, and he really didn't serve the suspension until the later part in the year, really past mid-season in November. And in those 6 games without Elliott, the Cowboys were 3-3. The first 3 games were complete disasters as the Cowboy offense went totally in the tank and got blown out by Atlanta, Philadelphia, and the LA Chargers in consecutive weeks in late November. But that suspension really did have an impact on that Cowboy team last year. Really had an impact on their season last year. So you can sit here and you can tell me about Dak Prescott, the quarterback, him being the face of the franchise and, of course, the leader of the team. Everything runs with the Cowboys. If they're going to be successful this year in 2018, everything runs through Ezekiel Elliott. And now they're going to have him here for a full year. And think about this. Here was a guy who just last year still ran for 983 yards last year in a suspended season. So he is now going to be ready to go. He's got all the troubles behind him. This guy is going to be ready to take off this year, you would have to imagine, in Ezekiel Elliott. Well, I would imagine we'll see the guy we saw just a couple of years ago when he took the league by storm, ran for over 1,600 yards and 15 touchdowns. I would expect that those numbers will be fairly close to where they were back in 2016. The one good thing for the Cowboys, other than the fact they have Elliott, is the fact that their offensive line is still regarded as one of the best offensive lines in the sport. So the Cowboys have those things going for them. Dak Prescott, whether in his development as the quarterback of this franchise, and the face of this franchise, I thought he kind of took a bit of a step back last year. I think a lot of people felt he took a step back last year. He turned the ball over 17 times last season, 13 picks, 4 fumbles. This will be a year for Dak Prescott to go out there, silence the doubters, if you will, and go out there and show that he can go back to being the guy he was his rookie year, where he just took everything by storm. Really, think about that. A couple of years ago, this was a Cowboy team that really stunned a lot of people. They came out of nowhere 2 years ago when they had these two guys in Prescott and Elliott come out of nowhere and lead this offense. So I guess it was only natural that they came back down to earth just a little bit last season. So the question is going to be, who are the Dallas Cowboys? Who are the Dallas Cowboys in 2018? Are they the team we saw 2 years ago that went 13-3, won the NFC East, and ended up losing to Green Bay in that wild divisional playoff game? Or are they the team we saw go 9-7 last year? That's the big question here for the Cowboys, and this is really a big year for Jason Garrett as well. You know, ever since he became the interim head coach in 2010, taking over for Wade Phillips, then he had the full-time job, it's really been a mixed bag for Garrett. I mean, it's been 8-8, 8-8, 8-8, then 12-4, and then the inverse of that the next year in 2015 of 4-12, then 13-3, as I said, 2 years ago, and then 9-7 last year. So he's been incredibly mediocre as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And let's be honest, I know Jerry Jones loves Jason Garrett, and that's the reason why he's kept him around this long. But if the Cowboys, let's say, go 8-8 again this year, or go 9-7, miss the playoffs, or even have an early playoff exit, does Jason Garrett warrant another chance to come back? That's going to be the big question. And really the big question for the Cowboys is, how effective is this offense going to be? Where is Dak Prescott going to throw the football this year? Remember, no more Des Bryant. Cowboys released him, and he's still looking for a team right now. Went to the Browns, and apparently, last I heard, the Browns didn't want him or something like that, or they couldn't come to terms on an agreement. Jason Witten, of course, retired. He's now in the booth with ESPN on Monday Night Football. So, where is Dak Prescott going to go with football through the air? Terrence Williams right now is the lone top target for this team, remaining from last year. Only had 568 yards receiving last year and no touchdowns. Been with the Cowboys for a while, never had a 1,000-yard receiving season, and has never had more than 8 touchdowns in a given year. They did acquire Allen Hurns from the Jacksonville Jaguars. They brought him in to try to get this team moving a little bit more, get this team a little more versatility at the wide receiver position. But you have to be concerned. And Hurns, too, a guy who a couple of years ago broke out. 2015 had a breakout year, had over 1,000 yards receiving, but the last 2 years, injuries, poor play, really hampered the last 2 years for Allen Hurns with the Jaguars. This is kind of a must bounce-back year for Allen Hurns with the Cowboys. And we'll see what happens here with the tight end position. You know, the tight end position is going to be a question mark as well. And then on the flip side, defensively, this has never really been a big-time defense, especially in recent years. They've been good. They've been in the top 10, but nothing that's going to blow you out of the water. And really the biggest concern for the Cowboys is their secondary. And a lot of people look at that secondary, guys like Jeff Heath, Xavier Woods, Kayvon Frazier, and a lot of people aren't really satisfied with what they see here defensively in the secondary, especially the safety position. They did bring in Jaron Johnson, who used to play for the Seahawks, but hadn't played since 2016. And a lot of people are disappointed because a lot of people thought that the Cowboys would be all in and trying to make a move to get Earl Thomas from the Seahawks. They're going to be satisfied with the secondary they have. It's a very questionable one at that. Outside of DeMarcus Lawrence, there really isn't a lot of big-time superstar power here defensively. I am worried about the Cowboys this year. I'm going to be very, very honest. I'm worried about them coming into this year. I worry about their defense. I worry about their receiving core. Yes, you got Dak Prescott. You got Ezekiel Elliott. But is this team good enough to snag one of these wild cards? I don't know if they are. And I think that, again, this is going to be an NFC that's going to be stacked this year, folks. It's going to be a lot of good teams this year. It's going to be tough for the Cowboys to come out and get a wild card this year. Could happen, certainly could, but I think it'll be tough. And the schedule right away off the bat, I think is very tricky for Dallas. They go to Carolina to start the year. They get the Giants at home, which is going to be a very interesting game. That game could go either way. We'll see how things go again. It's week 2, but it is an NFC East matchup, and these two teams always play even football games every time they meet. That will be a tricky game. And then the Cowboys hit the road for Seattle to take on the Seahawks. Now, I know Seattle's not what they used to be. I know their defense isn't what it used to be, but it's still a road game in Seattle against the Seahawks with Russell Wilson and all that and that crew up there. That will not be an easy game for Dallas at all. And the Cowboys almost never play well in Seattle at all. Then they have Detroit at home, and then they visit Houston, and then they get Jacksonville at home, October 7th and 14th, respectively. It could be a very rough start for Dallas. It really could. They could end up putting themselves behind the 8 ball very, very quickly, unless they get off to a very fast start. So I'm worried about the Cowboys. Again, I will predict what their record will be at the end of this video, but right now let's move right along, keep this thing going. Let's go to the Giants. Now, the Giants are coming off what was one of the worst seasons in franchise history. Easily, maybe the worst season ever in Giants history. 3-13 last year. It was a complete debacle. Ben McAdoo was a complete mess. He didn't know what he was doing there. Eli Manning getting benched late in the year and putting all the blame, as McAdoo did, on Eli. When you look at that team last year, there was a lot of blame to go around. Yes, Eli did not play well, but the offensive line was horrible last year. They had no running game at all. They had injuries galore at wide receivers, so it wasn't all on Eli Manning. And not to mention the defense had underachieved from where it was the year before in 2016. So a forgettable year in 2016 for the Giants, or 2017 for the Giants, and they're trying to turn it around this year. They bring in David Gettleman to give them some stability in the front office as general manager. They bring in Pat Shurmur, a veteran coach, to be the head coach. Now, yes, I know Shurmur was the head coach of Cleveland a few years back. Did not have a lot of success there, but who has had a lot of success in Cleveland? Think about that. I mean, this is a team that has Hugh Jackson, who's won 31 and is in 32 games as its head coach. The fact that Pat Shurmur won 9 games in 2 years, give the guy a medal for what he did in Cleveland, for that matter. But that's the new leadership group here for this Giant team. They gave some they've asserted their confidence in Eli Manning, and I think that's a good thing. Now, look, Eli's getting up there in age. No doubt about it. He's 37 years old. The interceptions were big. The turnovers have been a big problem with Eli, but that's been the problem with Eli throughout his career, have been turnovers. That's probably not going to change. What is going to change is the fact that the Giants are coming in here with a healthier team. You're going to have Odell Beckham Jr. back. He's going to be healthy this year. You hope to have him back and healthy for the full year this year. Sterling Shepard's going to be ready to go. You have Evan Ingram in his second year as a tight end on this team, so you got some weapons there. And now, finally, you give Eli Manning some protection on the offensive line. They go out there, they bring in Nate Soldier to be their left tackle. They move Eric Flowers, who, by the way, is still a disaster. If you saw the preseason game against Detroit, he was getting smacked around by people, Eric Flowers, at right tackle, but they move him over there. They go out and they draft Will Hernandez, who is a nice pickup. Looks like he could be a stalwart there on that offensive line for a very long time. Big kid from Virginia. And then, of course, with their first round pick, second pick overall, they take Saquon Barkley. And I know we had this discussion in previous videos on this channel during the draft. I know there were a lot of Giant fans who were upset that they wanted the Giants to go out there and get Sam Darnold. They wanted to get the next franchise quarterback, and instead they settled for Saquon Barkley. Let me be honest. I understand where the Giant fan is coming here, but a lot of this team is built to win now. You have guys, again, superstars like Beckham. You have a star like Shepard. You have stars in this, veteran guys on this defense like Damian Harrison and Landon Collins. You want to go out there, Olivier Vernon. You want to go out there and give yourself a chance to win right now. And the guy that gives the Giants the best chance to win right now, I hate to say it for those Eli haters, is Eli Manning. He gives them the best chance to win right now. So to go out there and draft a guy like Saquon Barkley, who is just going to give them so many options out of the backfield, it's going to be a huge plus for this team moving forward. I mean, here's the guy who was averaging 5.7 yards per carry when he was in college. He was averaging about 11.7, almost 12 yards per catch. Now, those numbers are going to come down a little bit here in the NFL, but certainly this guy is going to be a change of pace back, and certainly gives the Giants the first time in a very, very long time that they now have a running back, a big-time NFL running back in this backfield, and they desperately needed that over the last few years, and I think it's going to pay dividends for the Giants. Defensively, again, there's going to be some changes, a new defensive coordinator now. We'll see how things work out. But still, you have a lot of the same faces coming back. Landon Collins, Damian Harrison, who's been a popular player here with the Giants since coming over from the Jets. Eli Apple, who we like to see, a lot of Giant fans like to see him pick it up just a little bit more. He didn't have any interceptions last year, and a lot of people want to see him pick it up. Olivier Vernon had a down year for him. He still had 7 sacks, but I think the Giants would like to see him get a little more. This is a defense that has the potential to be pretty good. It has potentially a pretty good defense. Now, I understand, look, this was a Giants team that was 3-13 last year. There were a lot of problems. There were a lot of problems all over the field, defensively, offensively, for this team. So, a lot of guys do have to pick it up here in 2018. There is no doubt about it, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Defense 2 years ago was really good, and last year dropped off. So, we will see what happens this year, but I think that with the new coach, with a new attitude in the locker room, you have a improved offensive line, a running game. I expect the Giants to be a better football team than they were last year. Are they capable of turning this totally around and winning 10, 11 games getting to the playoffs? Probably not. Can I see the Giants getting to 9 wins this year, 8 or 9 wins? I do. I really do. Now, again, let's take a look at the schedule. They open up with Jacksonville. No, start of the schedule is not easy at all. They open up with Jacksonville at home. They go to Dallas and Houston week 2 and 3. They get New Orleans week 4, at Carolina week 5, Philly week 6, and that's on a Thursday night, and then at Atlanta week 7, and then Washington week 8, and then after a bye week at San Francisco. These are not easy games for the Giants at all, and that's why a lot of people think the Giants could end up, like 2-7, 3-6, come right out of the gate for the first half of the year. But we will see if the Giants can go out there and find a way to pick off a couple of these games. I think the Jacksonville game could be a possible win for them. Now, I know Jacksonville is a great defense, but I don't like Blake Bortles at all. They're a quarterback. I think the Giants will have a chance in that game. Philadelphia has a very tough game before that Giant game. They have to play Minnesota the week before, and we'll see where they are at that point in the year. That could be a game where the Giants keep it close. I think at the very least the Giants are going to keep a lot of these games close. I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to win, but I think this is a team that overall when the season is over, you're going to see a better football team. It may not result in a lot of wins. That's just about it. You might see a team that will win, at most, maybe 8 games. The last team here on this preview of the NFC East is the Washington Redskins. Now, the Redskins did have the most significant change under center, and that, of course, is at quarterback Kirk Cousins, leaving via free agency as he leaves for the Minnesota Vikings, and the Redskins go out there, and they bring in Alex Smith. Now, I know a lot of people are going to sit there and say, well, Alex Smith is older, and you still don't have that franchise quarterback. I totally understand that if you are a Redskins fan. I get it. At the very least, and I'm not, look, I'll be honest, early in his career, I was not a big Alex Smith guy. When he was in San Francisco, I didn't think he was very good. In fact, he wasn't very good. Didn't have a very high completion percentage. There was a couple of years where he wasn't really healthy all the time. Didn't put up big numbers. And he really didn't fit that team at that time. Once he got to Kansas City, his career started to turn around. When you take a look at the numbers he put up in Kansas City from what he put up in San Francisco, totally different player. Really was. All of a sudden, he's completing around 65% of his passes on an annual basis. The interceptions are now in single digits. He's, last year threw for 26 touchdowns. That's a career high for him last year with Kansas City. Became a different player. Became a big-time leader for that team. And, yes, the Chiefs move on. They go out. They want to roll with Pat Mahomes this year. I totally get it. But Alex Smith could help this Redskins team. He could keep them competitive this year, and I think he will be a big plus for this team. I think he'll stabilize things a little bit for this Redskins team. And look, this is a Redskins team that still has some talent. You take a look, guys like Jamison Crowder, Jordan Reed at tight end. There is still some talent here offensively. Now, the big problem for the Redskins was the fact they lost their top draft pick, Darius Geese, for the season with an ACL injury, so now they're going to have to go back and rely on Samaje Perine to be their primary back for the entire season this year, and even he has been beaten up with some injuries as well with Perine, so there are question marks with this running game. I know that the Redskins went out there and they brought in Adrian Peterson. That's just filler right now, folks. Adrian Peterson may not even make this team when the training camp finally breaks in a couple of weeks. Don't expect a lot from him. It's going to be Perine. He's going to be their main guy out of the backfield. But that's really the biggest concern for Washington going into this year. Offensively, they bring back a lot of the same faces. Guys like Jonathan Allen, Ziggy Hood. You have, of course, Ryan Kerrigan, one of their leading sack leader. Josh Norman, the Mr. Big Mouth, there in the secondary. Now, this was a defense that was not very good last year. They were ranked 22nd in the league in total defense, so they need to step it up this year. And really, like the Dallas Cowboys, with questions about the coaching staff and with questions about Jason Garrett and his tenure in Dallas, a lot of questions are going to be asked about Jay Gruden over in Washington. He's been with the Redskins for a few years now, and this team has really been nothing but mediocre since he's been the head coach. He needs to find a way to get this team at least to a wild card, certainly to get them to 9 wins this year and make them competitive. Otherwise, you could see Dan Snyder going out there, making some changes. So I think the Redskins will be competitive. I think they'll frustrate a lot of teams in the NFC East at times this year. I don't know if they are a playoff team, but they will certainly hang around. Let's just pull up the schedule very quickly. They do get the Cardinals and the Colts to start the year, so do not be shocked if they get off to a fast start. Does not mean they're going to be on their way to doing something big, but I would expect Washington to get off to a pretty quick start first 2 weeks of the year. That will come crashing back down to earth, certainly by Week 3 when they get Green Bay, and then New Orleans in Week 4, Carolina Week 5. You see where I'm going with this. Dallas Week 6 at the Giants, Falcons. Yeah, it's going to get tough as the year moves along here for the Washington Redskins here in 2018. So let's take a quick look now finally at the final standings that I project. I have the Eagles winning this division again at 12-4. I'm going to have the Cowboys and the Giants in virtually a tie for second place at 8-8. I think both teams will be 8-8 this year. I do have concerns about the Cowboys, as I mentioned before. I think the Giants will be better than they were last year. Yes, 8 wins for a team that won 3 games all of last year. And the Redskins round at the bottom. 6-10 I have them. They'll be around 6-10, 7-9, somewhere in that area. But you get the idea. It's going to be the Eagles division, and then everyone else right behind them. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. Remember to follow us again on the social media at OpenMicNJ on Twitter, Facebook.com/OpenMicProgram. Remember, like and subscribe right here on Sports Talk Nation. Stay tuned for more videos coming up next time right here on the Open Mic Program.